So this is especially triggered, and this video is going to be on maturity and the living wage. One of the things that I hear, especially on the left, is the concept of a living wage. And basically, the living wage is a wage that if you give this money to somebody, they can have a life. They can, afford their rent. They can afford their food. They can afford everything that they need in life. Now, a living wage is, as you might suspect, kind of ambiguous. What does that really mean? Like, for example, if I work in Toronto, Toronto is a big city in Canada, it's very expensive to live there. Rent can be anywhere from $2,000 to $3,000, depending on the apartment. It can be fairly expensive to commute to work. If you want to get a car or something, or if you need like some kind of transportation, it's expensive. And those are all costs that you as a person have to have. And also food, you have to have food and stuff like that. But you might have dependents as well. So you might have a child or multiple children. You might not have a spouse. So these are all things that you have to consider. So if you think of a living wage as something that has to pay for all of these choices, like a company has to say, well, your choice is to live in Toronto. You could live outside of Toronto and the rent is cheaper. And your commute will be longer, but you could live outside of Toronto and commute to work. And you don't need a car. You could still use subway or bus. It might take longer, but that's a decision. So there's like all these things that you could consider when creating a living wage. And what ultimately I think when I think of a living wage is maturity. Now, I was watching this video from PragerU, and I'm not sure if you're a fan of PragerU or not, but I like their videos for some, sometimes they're quite good. And there was a video on maturity, and I thought it was a really great video that kind of, in a weird way, addresses the question of the living wage. Now, personally, as a capitalist, I do not believe a company is obligated to pay a living wage. They are obligated to pay a wage because this is not slave labor, but they are not obligated to pay a living wage. Because a living wage is, as I said, it's ambiguous because it really is considered a living wage is based on your decisions. You can decide whether or not you have a child. You can decide where you live. You can decide whether or not you have a car. You can make the decision about the type of food you eat because some food is cheaper than others. So you can make all those decisions. And for a company to make all those decisions for you doesn't make sense. It's very arbitrary. But really, it goes back to maturity. And the reason I say maturity is if you are somebody who is a mature individual, and that means somebody who takes responsibility for your actions, somebody who understands the consequences of their decisions. This is maturity here. Then you are somebody who can take a wage, whatever that wage is. Let's say it's $20 an hour, and you can figure out based on simple math. Well, if I earn $20 an hour, that's $40,000 a year. I have to pay my taxes. I have to pay my rent. I have to do all these things. Then a lot of that decision making is your responsibility to figure out how that wage meets your budget. And that's where maturity comes in. So whenever somebody pushes a living wage, they're really just, it's kind of this bogus thing that it sounds nice, but it's really taking the responsibility out of the individual and giving it to somebody else. Often it's giving it to the government because the government is the one that decides what is a living wage, rather than you as an individual being mature and taking that decision on yourself. So if I know that I'm only going to have $2,000 to live on each month, then I'm going to make decisions based on that. I'm going to not spend $2,000 on rent because then I won't have any money for food. I will make decisions based on that. Maybe I won't afford a 2-bedroom apartment. Maybe I'll just get a 1-bedroom apartment based on what my means are. So this is where maturity comes into play. You have to know what it is that you're dealing with, you know, how much money you have, and then you make decisions based on that amount. The same applies to what you do when you're looking at jobs. Okay, so if you see a job and it only pays a certain amount, and you know that you can't make ends meet based on that amount, then you have to make the mature decision to say, well, maybe that job is not suited for me. I mean, there's jobs that we love to do. Like I know lots of people that would love to be a gamer or a YouTuber, but the amount of money you can earn doing those things is not that much. So you might have to consider that those kind of jobs are not going to pay the living wage that you want. So you got to make those decisions. And you also have to make the decision sometimes to say, well, is this job going where I want it to go? I sure I can subsist at whatever level, but I want more in my life. That's the way I always see my business. How much I want to grow my business is really based on what my needs are. I might want to buy a bigger house, or I might want to, you know, pay for my daughter's dance lessons, or you know, something like that, where I have to earn more money. Well, then I'll have to grow my business to match that. And the same applies to an employee, where you say, well, right now I can only earn this much because this is how much I'm worth. But if I can increase my skills, if I can do XYZ or work more hours, then I can earn more. So again, that's all about maturity and taking that personal responsibility, where you say what your living wage is, you determine how you can achieve that living wage, and then you also determine how you can live within your means. And one of those things that we don't talk about enough nowadays is how to live within your means. And not just live within your means, but have a little extra each month so that you can grow your wealth. The big thing that a lot of people do nowadays is they just spend all their money. They spend it all. They spend more than what they earn. They rack up debt. They have credit card debt. We are very indebted nations, and it's not a good way to be. And I see it as a societal lack of maturity with money. And it's really important to be mature with your money and know how much you have, how much you need, and and build upon your wealth. One of the things that I always do is I always put money aside. I put money aside for my kids' education. So when they get to university, I'm not like scrambling to come up with that money. Their education's already paid for because I put money aside each month for them so that when they get to university, the money will be there. I put money aside for my retirement. I do things where I invest in certain things so that there's money there. I do things where when I had a mortgage, I don't have a mortgage anymore, but I would pay double up payments so that I'd pay my mortgage off faster. Things like that. It's all personal responsibility, which these mature ways of dealing with with money really sets me above. You know, it helps me succeed and makes my life easier so I can have a better life. This is the kind of things that we have to see, this personal responsibility. So don't look to your company to take care of you. Look to yourself to take care of yourself. And this is a very different way of thinking than the way the people on the left generally think. They have a tendency of thinking about how can we get the government to take care of us. I personally, I'm conservative in the way I think, and I like to think of how can I take care of myself. And if you're a baby, you probably want people to take care of you. But I think it's time for all of us to grow up and let's be mature about this. Let's be mature about our money and our own personal responsibilities. And let's get the government out of our lives and live as adults. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope this makes sense in terms of the living wage and my understanding of it and appreciating the concepts of the living wage. And I hope that you enjoyed the video. Please like, comment, and subscribe, all that wonderful stuff. And be the mature person by watching my other videos. Thank you. Bye.